Well, jeepers! You're listening to Smash or Pass.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another interview on the JayBee and Milly channel. I am JayBee and of course with me is Milly.
Hi.
And the special guest who will be interviewing today is Mr. Stephen Nicodemus. Thank you so much for joining today.
Thank you. Thanks. Nice to be here. Thank you. Nice to meet you guys.
Oh, it's incredible to have you here, and we've got a lot of questions about the work that you've done. I suppose as it pertains to us on this show, focusing on a lot of that Scooby aspect. But before we get started on that, I'd like to kind of build a timeline of your career and everything like that. So I understand from IMDb that you started as a background painter in 1997, but on the build-up of that, was there anything that made you go that particular route or that made you make the decision to become a background painter?
Yeah, and going back, I went to art school, art center, and at that time there was a period where commercial illustration was the big push, and so I did commercial illustration for 10 years outside of school, but with the advent of Photoshop and just a lot of things were changing in the industry. I made that transition to animation. And part of it is just, it's regular work, and it actually was a little bit more fun than working alone in a studio all the time. So yeah, I made that transition, and my first show was Life with Louie, and then Johnny Bravo with Cartoon Network, and from Johnny Bravo, I moved around a bit between, at the time, Warner Brothers and Cartoon Network were sort of joined because of Turner. Turner bought Hanna-Barbera, the library. Then he joined up with Warner's, and they married the two together. And then after difficulties between Cartoon Network and the way they do things and the way Warner Brothers does things, Cartoon Network split off and got their own studio. So we were there at the very beginning when Cartoon Network got the studio, and Bill Hanna and Joe Barbera were still part of the company. And so it was Bill Hanna who smashed a champagne bottle against the building in downtown Burbank. And I was standing right there, and I have pictures of it somewhere. I'll have to go find them and dig them up. But I was standing right there and got a really good picture of that. And that was a really exciting time because that was the beginning of Cartoon Network as we know it. And now, as we see in the news, they're going to be joining back up again with Warner's, which is like, oh boy, here we go again. So yeah, they just do things differently, and I really appreciated the way they worked. They were board-driven shows over at Cartoon Network, where as Warner Brothers, they're script-driven. So it's just two different ways of working. But yeah, I got into I worked on between both the studios quite a lot. I worked on a Duck Dodgers show with Warner's that I really enjoyed working with Tony and Spike, and it was just a lot of great memories working both with Cartoon Network and Warner's. A lot of fun times, a lot of good people, a lot of really, it was really great golden memories of those years. And then after working over, I bounced around, like I said, after Duck Dodgers went over to Cartoon Network, and worked on, what was that? My gym partner's a monkey, and worked with Dan Kroll on that. And I was, background painter, and Dan left after a season, and I took over as art director, and art directed another season and a half, I think, there. After that, went to Marvel and worked on a bunch of Marvel. I said, oh, wouldn't it be fun to work in Marvel movies? And I mean, I just follow my whatever I think is fun, right, at the time. So that's what drives me. And whatever I feel is like, oh, this is going to be fun, work on Marvel. So we worked on a whole bunch of Marvel direct-to-video movies. after that, Warner Brothers calling me back because they did DC stuff, and they said, we want you to work on DC. And I was like, okay, I'll work with Bruce Timm. I've never worked with Bruce Timm. Okay, I'll work with Bruce Timm. So I worked on a few of his movies, and Under the Red Hood, and Crisis on Two Earths, and I forget what else, but there was a few. And then all of a sudden I see Dan Kroll over at Warner's working on Scooby, and that in the office next to me. I go, what are you doing here? I'm working on Scooby. Oh, really? And I go, oh, I want to work on that. So I ended up from the very beginning. I worked on Scooby. I think I was like the one person that was there almost the longest, besides Mitch, the writer, and a few others maybe. But so Dan worked just like he did over on the other show. He worked for one season as art director, then he got a job, I think at DreamWorks somewhere. And I took over as art director after he left, and but was there the whole time as an artist. That's what I enjoy doing. So I enjoy the background painting and the whole, lighting and creating the drama, and just making the story, sing. So that's making the jokes funnier, making the scary part scarier, all that stuff. I loved it. And so anyway, that's where it was. That's how I got onto Scooby. So hope
Wow,
that.
that sounds incredible. Like you said, kind of following the fun. It certainly seems like there was a lot of fun stories and takeaways from that. And I mean, kind of like you were saying, things started off, with art school and things like that. What kind of pushed you to go down that route? Did you kind of watch any shows growing up, or follow any artists in particular that, inspired you?
Yeah, I've always cartoons were an escape for me when I was young. So I'm sure with like a lot of kids, it's that's what you do. And when you're supposed to be doing your homework, or you're and back in the day when I was younger, we'd come home from school, and they'd have it like, it was like, you can't record that. Back in those days, you couldn't record your show or watch it anytime you want. You had to watch it when it aired. So you had to, like, schedule your time and get home and watch cartoons right after school. And they play them right before school too. So I'd be watching Popeye, in the morning. And every morning I get up and eat my cereal and watch Popeye. And I loved Popeye. And I just remember just being a huge Popeye fan. And of course, Scooby and all of the Warner Brothers cartoons, and many others. I remembered watching Speed Racer, and just all of the. It's just I was just a cartoon addict as a kid, and anyways, that got me. I always loved cartoons, but also wanted to be an artist. So I wanted to be more like a dramatic and more serious artist. So I studied and practiced more serious art. So so cartoons was kind of like sort of like a fallback in a way. It was like, oh, I love cartoons, but I am more of a serious artist at the same time. So I take it very seriously. I studied, design and composition and all that stuff. So so it was just very easy to do cartoons. But anyways, that's my whole background. So, but to answer your question.
No, that's great, thank you. And like you said, to go from watching Scooby as a cartoon when you were younger to working on it, and it really was an incredible journey to hear about. So I guess something else I'm quite curious to know is, when you work on a project as a background painter, what type of direction and kind of what's that process like? Are you kind of given much direction at all? Are you kind of left to kind of leave something to the imagination kind of thing?
Well, we were pretty much given free reign or whatever, to say, here's a black and white drawing, paint it, So sometimes sometimes there's the first thing you want to do is figure out the lighting. First thing, what time of day is it? Okay, is it night? Is it daytime? Is it afternoon? Let's look at the storyboard. So I'd look at the storyboard and say, okay, all right, it's afternoon and it becomes night, and say, first part of the scene is a day, and then or for example, the lights go out, a monster shows up, right? Here's what happens. It's normal lighting, and then flick, the lights go out, and here comes the monster, it's like, and so it's the lighting that dictates what kind of painting, what kind of coloring you're going to do, and of course the mood. So you follow the mood of the piece, where the characters are just like happy, normal, normal day. You keep all the lighting very normal, and when it gets to be scary, then you push the colors, reds and purples and greens, and then you push the lighting. And so that really was the way you approach it. You look at the story and look at the mood, and you want the mood to be light. You keep it very light. And then there's also the part of the focal point. You want to light the area that's important, where they're digging around in a storage unit, or like a warehouse or something like that. You want to focus on the lighting on an area that maybe they're going to go and interact with, and kind of fade off the areas around it. So but yeah, it's there's a lot of psychology in colors. So greens and reds and purples and whatever. So you just kind of choose your colors that way.
Oh yeah, that is incredible. I mean, there's a lot of shows that when we were researching for this, that we checked on IMDb, that you worked on, and I just remember absolutely loving stuff like Johnny Bravo. That was probably one of the first cartoons that I tried to actively watch every single episode of. And so when I was looking at that on IMDb, I noticed that listed your role as background color as opposed to background painter. So what are the distinctions between doing background color and background painter?
It's the same. It's just, yeah, it's the same thing. Back in those days, it was real paint. We were actually using real paint. And if you want to have a little inside scoop on that show, the sky was kind of like this aqua green colored sky, right? Well, the reason for that is we followed up a long period of them doing at Hanna-Barbera, them doing the Smurfs show. So they had gallons of this green paint, blue green paint in the warehouse, or in the storage, which was just around the corner from our office. And we were just going through the storage, and we're looking at, oh, okay, let's make the sky this color since we're going to do so much of it, right? So we just got that blue-green Smurf color, and we just used it for the sky, because it was economical. So anyways, it's just one of those things. But yeah, we all painted with paint back then. Same with Powerpuff. It was done in paint, and they were on the same floor as us. They were doing their shows.
It's amazing to hear stories like that about not only just things actually been done in person, but also like with paint and materials like that, because obviously now you kind of hear so much about people working on projects, and it's they have their meetings over Zoom, and then they do it on the computer and send it across and things like that. So hearing stories about things been done in a studio, being collective, and how it relates to other shows as well is always really interesting. And how did coming onto the project of Johnny Bravo come about? Do you remember?
How did that project come about? Did you say?
Do you remember how you became involved in that project?
Yeah. Well, Dan Partible did the first original pilot, first season, and then they they ended it, right? So and they didn't pick it up for another season. When Warner Brothers and Turner merged, they were looking for projects to kind of start working on. So again, for some reason they didn't give it to Van to run the show. They gave it to Gary Hartle and another group of writers. And like I said, at Warner's, they were writer driven. So they picked a couple of writers to work on that, and they said, "Hey, let's try Johnny Bravo again." So we kind of went in and sort of revamped the show. We got new character designs of Johnny Bravo. I actually worked on the first season. If you look on the credits, you'll see I did some freelance work on the first season of Johnny Bravo, and so as a freelancer. So when I applied over at Warner's, at that time, I was looking for a full-time job. They just called my name and they liked my portfolio. Maybe they saw I worked on the first one. I don't remember, but they called my name and interviewed me, and I was like, yeah, let's do it, And a funny story, and I know you guys would like to hear stories. So there was who's the creator for Family Guy?
Was it Seth MacFarlane?
Yeah, Seth MacFarlane. Sorry, yeah, I just forgot his name for a sec. Seth MacFarlane was a writer on the first Johnny Bravo show. So Seth was actually interviewing for the season 2, the one we were working on, and during the interview, he got a call from Fox or something, and he got a show, Family Guy, greenlit, and he left the interview. He said, "Sorry guys, I got my own show. I don't need a job." So that was the beginning of the Family Guy right there. Right at that time, we were doing the second season of Johnny Bravo, and his sister ended up working on our show as like, a production coordinator or something. And so we got to know his sister. And so, but it's very, very interesting, a very interesting time. So getting back to what was the question now? How did I get on that show? That it was just over my portfolio, and I did work on the first season. That's about it.
Oh no, well, it is incredible to hear all those stories, because it's like you'd never know this type of stuff unless you ask people like yourself, and it's just so interesting to know that within that the title that is Johnny Bravo, there was also the seed of Family Guy, which is still seeing
Right.
quite a lot of popularity today. And speaking about like stuff that's really popular today, we've spoken a little bit about Scooby and a little bit about Johnny Bravo, but from IMDb, I can see that you worked on that crossover episode of Scooby and Johnny Bravo. Do you remember what this experience was like at all?
Oh, the crossover when let's see. Did I work on that? Sorry, which one was that?
It was
There.
when it was called Bravo Dooby Doo, and it was when Johnny Bravo met Scooby and the guy.
Oh, right. Yeah. I remember that. That was a funny show. But to be honest, I don't remember working on it. Maybe I did. I just don't, some of these shows are a blur to me. So, but I do remember something funny about that show where Velma drops her glasses and she's like looking around on the ground. She's going, "Where are my glasses? My glasses. I can't see my glasses." And Johnny Bravo, because they bump into each other and they both drop their glasses. She goes, "I can't see without my glasses." And then Johnny Bravo goes, "Where are my glasses? My glasses. I can't be seen without my glasses." So that was really funny. I don't know. But I may have worked on that. I just don't remember. I can't, to be honest, it's just sometimes some of these shows are blurred to me.
Yeah, no, I mean, given the amount of credits you have on IMDb, I imagine certainly, like you say, trying to differentiate them all can certainly take a lot. And I guess I think that was kind of some of the first work you did on Scooby, but you said before it you were quite familiar already with, watching it growing up and things like that.
Oh yeah, I used to watch it with my aunts and uncles and as a kid, and so there's really a lot of good memories of that. So being part of it it's fun, and I'm glad to have been a part of it. I worked on, you may not know this, but because it doesn't show up on IMDb or anything. And by the way, IMDb has my wrong birthday, and I can't change that. I've been trying to get them. It says I was born in 1955 or something like this, and I'm not that old. But anyways, IMDb is not always accurate. But there's one of the things that I did do on a lot of Scoobies when we were working on the Mystery Incorporated. They were at the same time we were doing Mystery Incorporated was a series. They were working at the studio on a bunch of direct to DVD movies. So they were doing a whole bunch of them, the Phantom and a whole bunch, and Abracadabra, whatever, Scooby Doo, and so I did a little bit of freelance on some of the backgrounds there. But what I was proud of doing was they asked me to do the title sequences for those shows. So I did in like about 3 different title sequences. One of them was the Phantom, and where I did all the painting, all the images. It was a lot of fun. And that was with Vic Cook too. Then there was some others that, Tony Cervoni and Spike were, dealing with some of these other shows. And they were just a lot of fun. So I remember working, and here's a good story that you might enjoy. So I'm working on Scooby, the Mystery Incorporated painting, and then after hours, I'd be at the studio late at night, working on the title sequences. So it was tough to do, because you're just working so many hours. So I'd be working on that late at night, and I'd be there till like 3 in the morning, working on these title sequences for these other shows. And the security crew would come by and they'd check on me, say, hey, you're still working. Okay, what? So I'd start chatting with them, and we talked about Scooby. And at the time, listen to this, the iPhone was kind of new, right? And they came out with all these cool apps, right? And one of them was a ghost finder app, right? So I don't, it was just a gag. I don't think it really worked, but we didn't know. We just like, hey, check out this ghost finder app. So we're looking at the ghost finder, and it says there's a ghost over here and there's a ghost over here. And the security guard says, oh, you want to see ghosts? You want to see ghosts? I'll take you, and we'll go, and I'll show you where the ghosts are in the studio. So we're in what's called the Columbia's ranch. It used to be where they filmed all the old Columbia movies. And during that time, they filmed all the Three Stooges. So what the Three Stooges would do is like the Columbia movie pictures is filming a gangster movie, right? So the Three Stooges would then say, okay, let's design our gags around gangsters, because they have all the props and all the costumes and all the actors. So they were basically the little freelancers too, like they filmed during the day, and then they borrow some of the actors in the props and all the things. So they filmed. So Three Stooges had a office right next to ours. And so the security guard said, yeah, come over here to the Three Stooges where they had their offices. And so we'd go over there with the phone app, and it's like, oh man, look at all the ghosts around here. And he says, when we'd walk through here, we'd do our rounds, and a couple of us would walk through this aisle, this hallway, and we walked through the aisle, and we hear noise behind us, and there was a chair that moved right right in the middle of the aisle, just like moved, and it was like just there, and they, whoa, that's scary, you know. So anyways, he took me around, and there's some good old ghost stories around the Columbia Ranch. So it was a lot of fun during those times. I mean, I'm up at 3 a.m. doing this with the security guards. They're driving me around on the golf carts and just showing me where all the ghosts are. So it was some good stories.
That's amazing. That could even be a Scooby Doo plot in itself, you know, like them trying to find ghosts in the studio. That sounds so much fun.
And it's fun because like the Three Stooges had like a cameo in Scooby Doo back in like the 70s, so it all kind of went full circle in that regard. And I love that story, you know, because like if you looked up my YouTube search history, it's like 95% of it is like ghosts caught in real life and stuff like that. So it's completely my style of story. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I mean, you mentioned staying up at all hours to work on the different title sequences and the work on Mystery Incorporated. And I think now that the dust has settled a bit, Mystery Incorporated is so beloved, but it's also renowned as being, quite dark in tone in terms of what Scooby-Doo would expect to be. And so when it came to your work with backgrounds, as both a background painter and the art director, was there ever a kind of emphasis on making the color palettes darker to fit in with that blend, or was it more just, as it was?
Yeah, it was supposed to be dark. I honestly feel like we went a little too dark. So, but I don't know. Let the fans decide whether. But I think we went a little too dark. But that's just me being my own critic. So, um, uh, but and sometimes it's in the translation too, with how we painted it and how it ended up on different people's screens and such. So, but it was a little dark. I think they did tell us we need to lighten up a little bit. So, um, but the subject matter was dark. I mean, it's hell, it's a dark entity underneath underneath Crystal Cove. So the subject matter really did lend itself to how dark we went, because that ultimately dictates how it was. So that's why we went so dramatic. It's the
I think
right.
it worked perfectly,
Yeah.
really. Like, there's very little, if not, and I can't think of one thing on the top of my head that I would change about anything to do with Mystery Incorporated. I just think it all came together so perfectly, and I would struggle to even find like a top 5 favorite scenes or sequences from the show because there's just so many. But from your perspective, are there any that you worked on that stand out to you as being particularly memorable?
For me, what stands out is, I mean, like I said, the dark stuff is really dark, and I actually like the more light, humorous stuff, like Baby Clown Man. I just love, and it's usually the characters it's the characters that draw my attention to why I like it. It's not so much the painting or all the dramatics, but it's the fun characters that created in the show. Like a hot dog water. Such a weird. It's such a weird name, a weird character, and I remember there was Hot Dog Water became like Lilith, and they're out in the desert, and that was a fun show where you got those desert characters from The Hills Have Eyes. I remember they kind of reminded me of the movie The Hills Have Eyes. So they're all living out there in their trailers and such. And Anyway, I just remember Baby Clown Man was a lot of fun. The character, he's so fun. Voiced by Mark Hamill, of course. I don't know if you knew that, but it's such a great job.
And so, can I ask then, after series 1, you then became credited as art director for Mystery Incorporated. So, how did that transition come about?
Oh, it was like the same, like I mentioned over at Cartoon Network. I worked with Dan Kroll. He was the art director, first art director on My Gym Partner's a Monkey. And then Dan's just like kind of gets bored after a season and then he wants to move on. So he did the same thing on Scooby. He actually got a pretty good job over at DreamWorks. So he left and they asked me to art direct. And so I just, just followed in his footsteps and just kept the consistency of the show keep going. And I wish the show kept going. I wish it wasn't more than just, wish it was like 4 seasons or, but there was a story arc and, it had to end at a certain point. So, but yeah, some shows do that. They have a story arc and they become a hit and then they keep going. They could have kept going, I guess, if they wanted to.
I mean, that's what makes Mr. Incorporated unique, is it was really the first Scooby show that did have that story arc. It wasn't just contained to individual episodes. And I think that was one of the things as well that so many people liked about it, and certainly would, welcome a series 3 for that show. But how did that kind of change, how did that kind of make your work different from series 1 to series 2? What was working on series 2 like for you?
Series 2 was fun. We did get some new people. So because I still did some background painting on that show. I did quite a lot, even as art director. But I did have to oversee a lot of the color styling, and so we got I think we got some new prop artists on that show. On the second season, we got a new character designer because Derek Wyatt went over to Ben 10, and he's been on Ben 10 ever since. So he was got offered the job to run that show, and yeah, people moved on. Everybody moved on in second season, so we had to get new people. So it was fine. It was good. We got some really interesting new people. Bill Ray was a painter on our show. He's a famous from Ren and Stimpy, and being a fine artist himself. He was a lot of fun to have. So it just was more managing. It was pretty stressful, but everything worked out. It's all fine. I was actually a pretty good manager, I have to say. I think I did pretty well with the budget and the timing and the scheduling and keeping things moving and getting things shipped and back from Korea and in a good, very efficient way. So I think I did pretty well in art directing on that. But yeah, it's I don't know. I mean, you can compare first season, second season. It may look different. I don't know. I just I'll have to watch it again to even try to pick it out. I haven't seen it in a while. So
I think the second season is absolutely incredible. And you mentioned stuff there like that I would never think about would fall under the realm of art direction, like budgeting and everything like that. And so I guess for people watching this that possibly aren't familiar with the exact role of an art director, what did that work entail? I guess either specifically for Mystery Incorporated or in general.
Well, you just have to line up your artists and you have to get them all. If someone's out sick, then you gotta or on vacation, you gotta find freelancers, and you have to have a good Rolodex of artists that and you worked with before. And so you gotta just keep the machine moving, right? That's the whole thing. But you gotta keep them. You have to give them instruction of what style you're doing your show in, give them all the brushes they need, all the materials they need to, and the references. so you just keep things moving, and like I said, you know, the story does dictate what direction you're going with the coloring, and you know, you want to kind of mix things up. You don't want every show to be the same color, you know, so you want to try to separate them a bit, and you know, try different themes for different characters, different monsters, and so yeah, just you know, just change things up and keep things interesting. um so yeah, I don't know if that answers your question or not, but you know, it's just, there is a business part of it, you know, and there is a, a part of it that and then you just, you know, you have to be kind of a people person to work with a lot of different people, and don't be a jerk. There's a few jerks out there, you know, in the world. But yeah, you just have to be nice to people, you know, be nice to people and be understanding, um, and try to inspire them to want to work with you. So that's part of it too. You know, it's like if they like don't like you, then they won't want to work with you.
I mean, you must have done a great job because, like I say, everything from Mystery Incorporated came together so amazingly. And even now, I think Collider did an article that was released a couple of days ago, maybe a week ago now, that ranked all the Scooby Doo shows, like from like I guess what they saw as the worst to the best. And Mystery Incorporated got like the best spot, like the #1 spot there. So it's just incredible how much love Mystery Incorporated still gets after all this time. But is there any like moment that you saw from the show or that you worked on that stands out to you as being one that you're the most proud of?
Hmm. Um, I can't really pick a moment. But I just like to comment on that article, and the reason I think why um, Mystery Incorporated was so good. And the reason was, well, first of all, Mitch Watson was, you know, just an incredible writer. Is if you look at his what he did after, he's always winning Emmys, you know, and always winning awards for his shows. He just got one for a show he's doing over at Nick. But he was, you know, the inspiration. Tony Cervoni was a great producer, and I think, you know, he's always been a good guy, you know, to work for. But at the time, this is what I think. At the time that Scooby was being produced, there was a little bit of a dip in the animation business where a lot of shows were kind of ending or done, and there was a lot of people that were very talented. Everybody had been an art director before. We all congregated to Scooby during that time. Jerry Richardson, Sue Mott, Sana Hong, Dan Kroll. I had art directed before. Derek Wyatt, you know, all these very, very talented people came together all at one time. And it was just and we were all kind of friends too. So we all had a lot of fun together. We all enjoyed each other's company. There's also, you know, Chris Siriotis, who is an amazing, if you look him up, you might know who he is, but he's amazing. There's also Bill Flores, who's also from Gravity Falls and other shows, like Uncle Grandpa. So all these people were our friends, and they're all very talented, and we all just ended up together in a lightning in a bottle kind of situation. So it was all very good memories and good fun, and we all enjoyed each other's company. We all got along. And then there was sorry, I want to mention Brian Smith and Melanie Pava. They did the color styling, and they're just great people. and they just really worked really hard because those color models were tough to do, and I really always felt bad for them because there was so much to do. Anyways, all the people that came together, it's all about the people, so the people, and it's a team effort. Animation's a team effort. If you have a really good team, you're gonna have a really good show. So that's why it was special.
I like that. I love that phrase that you used, lightning in a bottle, because I think it's the best way to describe the series, like how everything almost had to be in place and the kind of hard work of the team it just shines forward so much. So definitely well deserving of that #1 spot. But like we've mentioned before, you also worked incredibly hard on the opening sequences of some of the direct-to-video movies, and the one that IMDb does list is the Legend of the Phantosaur movie, which was really awesome. And looking back at that era of movies, the opening title sequences do shine as something so incredible from that era that I really miss nowadays. Like, for all they try and kind of style it out, just like everything from the choreography, the different art style from the opening sequences is incredible. So I'd like to know more about that in terms of like, where does the concept for those come from, and kind of what exactly was your role when it came to designing those opening sequences?
Well, I think that one was that the one. Yeah, I remember that one. There was a storyboard, so it was sort of storyboarded out already. I think Vic Cook was the producer and director on that one. He just came to me and said, "Hey, we need images for this. Can you do it?" And so I just took the just honestly, I don't remember exactly, but I know I did. I know I did all those backgrounds. I know I just did all the paintings, and I was just posting that up on a website I'm trying to build. And I'm like, wow, I did all these paintings here, and I did the color models as well. And so I'm not sure which one that was, but I just remembered I did all the painting and the color models, and I just I kind of put the color models right on the paintings after I did them, and um, just see how they work and make sure they worked, and uh, just gosh, man. um, it was just one of those things where you're just working late at night and you're just doing as much as you can, trying to pump it out, and but I know it came out really good. I know. Not sure which one that is. Which one was that? The Legend of the Phantosaur?
Yeah, so the opening title sequences of that, I believe it was I know that the song that they used was Dig It Scooby Doo, and it was where they were
Oh,
kind of running
right.
around a mine shaft, there's like dinosaur bones.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that's the one that I was working on late at night when I was telling you the ghost story. So that's the one that Tony approached me, Tony Cervoni, and said, "Hey, we want you to do this one." And so I just had to do all the, I create the haunted house, the mausoleum. There's a mausoleum. Um, and who did the character designs was Dexter Smith. I remember Dexter Smith was our character designer over on My Gym Partner's a Monkey and Johnny Bravo, and he did the character designs um, for that title sequence. But he did it way back. He did it like way back when I was working on a show at Warner Brothers, and he tried to pitch, a Scooby Doo, actual Scooby Doo series with those characters. We love those characters so much that I think Tony must have said, "Hey, let's use these in at least a title sequence." And they're really cute. I remember, those characters are really beautiful. So we used them in the title sequence for that episode, or that movie. and at least they got to be used. And I honestly, I would love it if they made a Scooby Doo with those characters. They're
Yeah, I
really
mean,
cute.
I
We said
remember,
that,
yeah, we
yeah.
did say that when because we like on the channel they also kind of gone back and done kind of like discussions about every movie, and when we saw the intro at that time, we were saying, because in that area there was a lot of unique art styles for the intros. That was one where we, made a point of saying you could
Yeah,
see that being an entire series or having a movie in its own right that was in that art style. It was such, a
yeah,
strongly concepted style. It was great.
that's Dexter Smith. So look him up. He's a really brilliant character designer. Yeah, he was on Johnny Bravo and Jim Partner. So we kind of did bounce around, not just me. It was the other artists as well. We were all kind of ended up on the same shows together. And yeah, he tried to pitch that as a series. It just failed. But maybe down the road, who knows?
Yeah, fingers
But the
crossed.
other one,
Fingers crossed.
yeah, the other one I was thinking of, you were mentioning, it was the Phantom. I think it's the Phantom movie, and that was done by I think Dick Cook did that one as well. That was a really fun one too.
Was that Stage Fright where they were like, it was like a Hollywood type of vibe to it?
Yeah, it had a um yeah, that one was like Phantom of the Opera type of.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, that one was amazing.
Yeah,
And
I
I
did
guess
that.
the most recent kind of trip for you into the world of Scooby that I found was art directing the Frankencreepy movie. Do you kind of have a
Oh,
memory about how that came about, and I guess like what your process was like for working on that movie as well?
yeah, that one I had left um I think I had left Mystery Incorporated, and mm, I think I was just looking for another job or something at that time, and I was on vacation and driving, with my kids in my Volkswagen camper, going up the coast of California, and then I got a call from the producer from that show, and um, I just didn't. Honestly, I was done with Scooby. I said, I'm done with Scooby. I'm done with Warner Brothers. I don't want to work there anymore. I want to move on. And and then the producer called me and said, "Hey, Steve, we got this Scooby movie. We want you to art direct." And this was a little point of contention because my friend was the art director on all those movies. I had two friends. There was Eric Simonis and Ted Blackman, and I didn't really want to take that job because that was kind of like their job. So it was kind of like stepping on other people's shoes. So, um, but they got a new producer, and so he just said, "I want Steve." So I met with him, and that's Paul McAvoy. He did a couple of projects over there, and so I met Paul, and I really liked Paul, and we became friends. And he talked me into it, and he says, I want you. That's who I want. I want you to art direct this thing, and we want to kind of do it. We don't want to use the characters from character designs from Mystery Incorporated, but we'd like to try to see if we can update the originals from the early '60s, and do something with that. And I said, okay, I'll do that. And so what I did was I did kind of a hybrid version for them for this. The studio, it's funny because the studio didn't want to change the original character designs from the '60s. They just um, wanted to use those originals. But the problem was we're doing full animation. So Fred's, head, was a certain height, when you look at him from the front, and then he turns to the side, and then his head is longer or something like that. So they didn't work for like full animation, like a head turn. So I had to go in and revamp all those characters. So I changed the characters and revamped them. Basically, what I noticed from the Scooby Doo Mystery Incorporated characters that Derek did is he elongated a lot of their faces, and he kind of gave them their hair was a little taller, and so I gave them like a blow dry. You know, all the characters I gave them like a blow dry. You know, like their hair kind of like raise them up, and I elongated a little bit in the face, and in like Daphne's legs, I elongated her legs, and then I did turns for all the characters. And the studio was like, I don't do all that work, you know, but you know, I wanted to, you know, so I did it anyway. They said, don't do it, but I did it. And so those characters and all the turns, all the head turns, all the mouth charts, I did it all, you know, I did all the characters. Then I did Velma, you know, Velma is the like bride of, you know, Frankenstein, the sexy bride of Frankenstein, Velma. So I thought I was going to get a lot of like, you know, internet, you know, buzz about that. But now what they're doing with Velma is just, you know, makes my makes my Velma look like, yeah, so boring. But yes, but anyways.
Oh, not at all. I mean, that Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein Velma is so iconic, and I mean, there's a reason why that design is on the front cover of like everything to do with the movie. It is just, it's the essence of the movie, really, and the fact that they wanted you to have that role in the film speaks so much to your talent and I guess dedication that you've just gone into. But with that movie being, you know, I guess a movie feature length, does that change your process at all versus like an episode of a television show or anything like that?
Well, the only thing different with that show or that movie was just being able to do a lot of character stuff, you know, like revamp the characters and do the Velma. And you know, it was a lot of fun because Paul was a really fun character. He was a clown, and he was a practical joker. I'll give you an idea. He did so many weird things. One of the executives went on vacation, and he put sticky notes, and he left his car at the studio while he was away for a week or two, and he put sticky notes all over his car. Like he came back and his car was all covered in yellow sticky notes. You know, that was Paul. So that sort of kind of got, you know, that kind of rubs off on you, you know, when you have a producer that's like this, you know. And so I said, oh, I'm gonna do some jokes with him too. So I created him as a character in the movie, and a bunch of the other artists that worked on the movie, like there was a guy named Robert Souza, which was a storyboard artist. He's a really funny, weird guy, you know, funny guy, weird guy. He's a rocker, you know, from the 70s, and he's got long hair and stuff. So I made him one of the characters, and he's very like very he's just a character. That's all. When he walked into his interview, he slides in and goes, "Hey, I'm Robert," you know. And so that's just how he is. So in the show, in the movie, I had him as one of the characters when they're celebrating at the end. He's the guy that jumps up on the table, and he's got like root beer in his hands, like, "Hey, it's me, Robert," you know. So that's Robert right there, that character. And you got Paul in there too. If you know what he looked like, he's around, and some of the other artists, they put him in there. So it was a lot of fun for that reason. But it was like it was kind of like a one-off kind of thing. And after that show or movie ended, I ended up going over to Cartoon Network again, you know, back and forth on Uncle Grandpa. So I ended up over there. So that was just I said, I'm never going to work on Scooby again. This is the last one. But then, being that you're Scooby fans, Scoob Holiday Haunt, I ended up working on that movie. Now,
Oh,
you probably don't know that because it's not on my IMDb.
no.
They killed that show. Well, what happened was I bounced around a bit and then ended up working at on Untangled, the series. And then when that ended, I ended up over on Space Jam at Warner Brothers again on WAG. After that ended, Mike Mike Karinsky, you did an interview with him, right?
Yeah.
He says, hey, he called me up and said, hey, I was looking at Scooby backgrounds doing the Scooby movie, and every time I saw a Scooby background I liked, your name came up. It was like, you're the guy, So he hired me to work on Holiday Haunt, and so I worked on that for about a year. And I mean, we put so much into that. I mean, the locations, the props, the everything. And it's so sad that nobody's going to ever see it. So every time I say, oh, this is my last Scooby, then another one pops up. So so far, that was the last one.
Oh, see, that
And,
is fascinating because, like you said, we interviewed Michael Karinsky like a week before like the news broke about the movie, and it was such a weird time. But I guess now that kind of the dust has settled on all of that, there's been a bit of time. I mean, is there anything that you can tell us about, I guess, the work that you did on Holiday Haunt, and I guess what the work that went into that?
yeah. Well, during COVID, everyone, was kicked out of the studio. So there's my parents have a place in Montana, so we just went up to Montana, the whole family, and I just started working remotely from here. And I'm here now in Montana. But during Holiday Hunt, um, I had to design the trees, all the pine trees and all that. And so that was my first assignment. And so I just go outside and I look around, and I'm starting to study all the trees. Started learning the difference between, the fir trees and the different conifers, and all that, studying all their pine cones and all their their needles are different. Like so some are like a comb, and some are like a bottle brush. So I had to like figure all that stuff out, and then the snow, and the snow on the ground, and the snow on the trees, and the snow on the branches. So for the trees, I had to figure out, okay, this is like a light snow on because we're getting into real detail because it's CG, and there's different time periods where, it's going to be like a light snow, then there's a medium snow, then there's a real heavy, like real heavy, like blizzard. And so I had to put the snow on the trees for all the different, different snow, different snow situations. And as you go inside, there was the lodge, and the lodge had interiors and such. And so I had to create the paintings for the interior of the lodge, which was the cafeteria, and it had to have more of like a country kind of theme to it. So there's tablecloths, and there's plates, and they all had a Christmas theme. So the plates have a Christmas design on it, and you have to just make up the Christmas design in the plate and the forks and the silverware. So it's way more detailed and different than television, where you're just painting rough backgrounds. You're painting the actual things that are going to be made into CG. So it's just quite a different thing. But being in Montana and having, neighbors that make canoes and such, so I put like, a Morley canoe on the wall, and that's a, guy that makes canoes down the street, and he's quite famous for it in here. So I say, oh, I'll put a Morley canoe up on the wall, I'll put things that are kind of Montana themes here, because there's like log cabins everywhere up here. And so the references everywhere. You just look down at the ground, you see wood texture, you see, rocks, and, all this same stuff that they were using in the movie. So it really helped me. And one of the big things that I didn't get to show was Mike said, hey, you guys have any like fine art paintings of landscapes, of things that would go in the movie, anything that's, mountain like. And I said, well, yeah, I have a lot of stuff like that, because I did live here for a while, and I did a lot of painting, like landscape and winter scenes and stuff. And I said, yeah, I have some stuff. And he looked at it, he goes, oh man, these are fantastic. Let's put those in the movie. Let's put them in the frames, So they did put a lot of those paintings in the frames and in the walls in the movie. So I have never seen them though done. So none of us have seen it, so it is supposed to be there, but one of these days maybe they'll do a screening for the people that worked on it at least and get to see it. But yeah, so it's really sad, and I feel really bad for Mike, because he just worked so hard, and everyone who's worked so hard on it, that we may never ever get to see it. So
Yeah, it was such a bad time, and I remember like the second we heard, I think we started up a petition and tried to kind of get the word out there about the movie, and just to let the higher ups know that there is an interest for it. And I think the timeline that I kind of formed in my head, I'm not sure if this is like the official thing, but I believe it was announced to be cancelled about 10 weeks after it had finished. But then at some stage they did just go back to just complete the movie, although with no plan on releasing it. So by the time the bad news broke, had your work finished on the movie, or were you kind of required to go back after and touch up some things afterwards?
no, I was done. I was done a long time before they announced that. I finished with Warner's about Christmas of last year, and then they farmed some of the production background paintings out to Brazen Animation, which is in Texas. And so then they hired me to do a few background paintings for kind of the follow-up, and that was in the spring, around this time, a little later than this last year. And then I did some of that, and then I was done. I was like, it was over, and then I didn't hear about it until I guess around September or something, or around there. And so they had already paid for the music and the scoring. So Tony went and scored the movie since everyone was already paid for anyway. They said, we're going to score it anyway. So they did it. The thing is, they say they can't release it because of they took a write-off, a tax write-off. So basically they can't monetize it, but they could release it and just not monetize it, right? So I'm hoping for that. So just don't make any money on it. Just release it and let people see it. Why not? So we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that speaks to me completely, because it's just something that has to be out there at this point. It's like, because it just sounds so good. I mean, just hearing what you talking about it now, and hearing Michael Korinsky and Bill Haller discussing the love and passion that went into the movie, it sounds like it was going to be like the Scooby movie. And we were trying to make content surrounding the Christmas time, like top 10 movies for Scooby to watch at Christmas, and you really struggle. So there was definitely that gap in the market for a Christmas-based or holiday-based Scooby Doo property. And so, are there any sequences or backgrounds or any kind of things that you worked on from Holiday Haunt that you would most like to see, brought back, brought to life, when if it eventually comes out?
Oh yeah. there was a couple. There was the lodge, you know, dining room that I did. There was the caves. There was the caves where it was underneath, where a lot of action took place. There was like a mine. There was like a mine tunnel, where I worked pretty hard at the, you know, Mike really pushed me to create the rock texture. So I created this interesting rock texture I loved. I used it inside the cave and the wood textures. It was just more fun with creating textures in rock and wood and stone and rust and so I did a lot of that stuff and so there was like this mine shaft in the caves, and there was also a sort of like a workshop for where they created the like there were like mannequin parts, arms and legs and stuff where they would create animatronic type characters. And so there was this workshop that was kind of like a creepy real Scooby Doo style background kind of thing where it was reminded me a bit of Mystery Incorporated, where the lighting is dark and there's a moonlit coming through the window and the monster shows up. Scooby was looking, of course Scooby always discovers the monster first and tries to tell the others, that kind of thing. But it was a real Scooby-esque type scene, and I created that. I remember painting that workshop, and all the paint buckets with the dripping paint and down the edges and the rusty tools and on the walls and hammers and whatever. So that was a lot of fun. I'll have to show it in my portfolio when I put it all together online. So anyways, it was a good show. It would have been fun to see, and I hope someday we get to see it.
Well, it's great that you've mentioned that you did work on it, because obviously, like, from, based on the back of this, like, I'm going to leave the petition that we did, in the description of this video, and try and get the word out there again, because it's really interesting to hear about all the things that we'd love to have seen. I guess in terms of that portfolio that you mentioned, so what role, or what was your exact role going to be on Holiday Haunt? Like, what would it have been classified as?
It was visual development. Yeah, it was a visual development job. I think on Space Jam, Space Jam was a combo where we did visual development, and then when we went into full production, we did production backgrounds as well. So I had a dual role on that show where I was visual development and background painter, but I think I got credited as just background painter. So I don't know. It doesn't matter to me. I don't care. But it's just that was a specific thing. We did come up with all the kind of ideas and such in the beginning. So anyways, yeah, it's all been real fun. It's been a good career, good times. It's all about the fun. Like I said, just follow whatever you think is fun, just do it. Whatever you enjoy, do it.
And I mean, there's certainly the thing that I've taken away from this is every time you say you're not working on another Scooby project, we see some form of genius. I mean, like you were saying, the design for Velma for Frankencreepy certainly was iconic. Other than her standard, orange and red outfit, I'd say that's the second most common, design for Velma people would jump to. And obviously the way that you've described the work you did on Holiday Haunt as well, that sounds absolutely fantastic. So we would love to hopefully see some more Scooby projects in the future. I'm sure if you say again that you're not going to do another Scooby project, we'll hopefully see something in the not too distant future. And with that in mind, is there any projects you are working on at the minute that you can tell us about, or anything like that?
Yeah, I can't. There's really nothing I can say about what I'm working on now. It's just Actually, I'm looking for another project, and I'm just kind of taking it easy right now. So that's about it.
Well, that's understandable. And you did mention during this that you were trying to build up a website, but in terms of people watching this that want to keep up to date with your work and what you've done, what you're going to be doing, is there a particular place that people can look for you online where they can keep up with that information?
Yeah, I do have an Instagram page. It's just S Nicodemus Art, I believe. You might know better than me. Yeah, I think it's S Nicodemus Art at S Nicodemus Art. That's about it. Right now, like I said, I'm building a website, and soon I'll be linking that to that Instagram page. I did have an old blog that Google won't let me get back into and edit it anymore for some reason, but that tends to show up in a lot of searches. But yeah, I can't get back into that site for some reason. So I have to either start a new one or forget about it. But that's about it right now. But yeah, you'll be seeing probably something I'm working on in the near future. We'll see. Can't talk about it, but you'll find out.
Oh no, that's quite a way. That's quite a way to bring this to a good conclusion. Hopefully there's going to be some stuff in the near future. Fingers crossed for that. And like you say, we'll leave the Instagram linked in the description down below, along with when the website's live, we can update the description and everything. But that is all the questions that we had listed down for you today. I just want to say just a huge thank you for coming on and being so generous with the time today, because you've definitely given a lot of it and told some amazing stories from your time working in everything in general. It's just been incredible.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's good to talk about some of the experiences, and I'm sure the fans will really enjoy some of the stuff that was behind the scenes.
Oh, I'm sure that they absolutely have. I mean, I'd like to ask people watching this to comment your favorite part of this interview in the comment section. And like I say, I'll put all of your kind of links in the description, along with our link tree and everything. So thank you so much to everyone for watching this. And if you do want to see more, then please like, comment, and subscribe. And we'll see you next time. And remember to sign the petition to save Scoob Holiday Haunt, because that's going to be something. Let's make it a reality. Christmas 2023. Let's manifest it. Thank you.